Before we begin, please note this lecture is for educational purposes only and does not replace clinical judgment or your institution's official guidelines. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're tackling a scenario you will all face in the emergency department. A patient in acute respiratory distress. They're wheezing, gasping for air. You suspect an asthma exacerbation. But what's your next move? What are the critical decisions you need to make in that first hour to save a life? Let's start with the fundamentals. An acute exacerbation is driven by three core pathophysiologic features: airway inflammation, bronchial smooth muscle contraction, and increased mucus production. This leads to the classic reversible airway obstruction. Think about the most common triggers you'll see. Overwhelmingly, it's viral infections. This is a key point we'll return to when we discuss antibiotic stewardship. Your first job is to rapidly assess severity. It's often simpler than you think. Can the patient speak in full sentences, or are they limited to single words? Are they sitting comfortably, or are they tripoding, hunched forward just to breathe? These simple bedside observations, combined with vitals like a heart rate over 120 or a respiratory rate over 30, paint a clear picture of a severe attack. Now, let's discuss the absolute must-miss red flags. These are the signs of impending respiratory arrest. A silent chest is not a good sign. It's a terrifying one. It means the patient is too tight to even move air. Cyanosis, confusion, and inability to maintain respiratory effort. These are harbingers of doom. You must act immediately. Peak expiratory flow is your best friend for objective severity assessment. It's a vital sign in asthma. We titrate oxygen carefully, aiming for 93 to 95% in severe cases to avoid worsening hypercapnia. And remember, a chest X-ray is not a routine test. We only order it when we suspect a complication, like pneumonia or a pneumothorax. Here is a critical concept that trips up many junior residents. Look at the SpO₂ assessment. Why would a normal carbon dioxide level be a danger sign in an acute asthma attack? Think about it. It's because the patient should be hyperventilating and blowing off CO2. A normal or rising CO2 level means their respiratory muscles are fatiguing. They are failing. This is a crucial, non-intuitive point. This algorithm is your roadmap for the first hour. Let's break down the severity assessment. First, clinical features. Can the patient speak in full sentences or drink fluids? If not, that's a red flag. Check mental status. Agitation, drowsiness, or confusion indicates cerebral hypoxemia and demands urgent action. Monitor vital signs. Respiratory rate greater than 30, heart rate greater than 120. And listen carefully. A quiet chest means minimal ventilation, which is critical. Now, objective measurements. Oxygen saturation less than 92% before treatment is high risk and likely requires hospitalization. Target saturation is 93 to 95%. Peak expiratory flow or FEV₁ should be measured. Peak flow or FEV₁ less than 50% predicted warrants checking an arterial blood gas, particularly PCO2. Here's the key. If PCO2 is normal or elevated in a tachypneic patient, that's impending respiratory failure. Disposition criteria. Admit if FEV₁ is less than 25 to 40% predicted, or if there's inadequate response to initial therapy. Discharge if FEV₁ reaches 60 to 80% predicted and symptoms improve. Remember, this assessment happens concurrently with starting treatment. Do not delay therapy while waiting for perfect data. Our bronchodilator strategy is straightforward. Short-acting beta agonists, like albuterol, are the cornerstone. In severe exacerbations, we add ipratropium bromide. Why? Because they work on different pathways, providing synergistic bronchodilation when it's needed most. There is no proven benefit for ipratropium in mild or moderate attacks. Corticosteroids are absolutely vital, but their effect is not immediate. They take 6 to 12 hours to work. So why do we give them right away? To prevent relapse and reduce the need for admission. And remember, for most patients, oral steroids are just as effective as intravenous. Don't delay therapy searching for 4-access. We've discussed oxygen titration. What else is in our toolkit? Magnesium sulfate, For severe, refractory cases, a 2-gram bolus can provide additional smooth muscle relaxation. It's safe, inexpensive, and can make a difference in your sickest patients. After your initial interventions, the 1-hour reassessment determines disposition. A satisfactory response with a PF over 70% means the patient can likely go home with close follow-up. An incomplete or poor response means admission is necessary, with the sickest patients heading to the ICU. But what happens when the patient doesn't improve after 48 hours? This is refractory asthma. At this point, the clinical imperative shifts. We move from simple escalation of therapy to active investigation. Continued failure suggests we might be missing something. It's time to become a clinical detective. What could we be missing? Think about the great mimics. Could this be cardiac dysfunction? Heart failure with preserved ejection fraction can look just like asthma in an older adult. Could it be GERD? Or an underlying anatomical issue like a pulmonary embolism? You must broaden your differential. In the refractory phase, resist the more is better fallacy. There is no evidence that arbitrarily doubling steroid doses helps. Instead, practice diagnostic precision. Since most triggers are viral, stop empiric antibiotics. Use tools like PCR and procalcitonin to guide your therapy. Be a steward, not a blind prescriber. For intubated patients, our goal is to prevent barotrauma. We use a lung protective strategy called permissive hypercapnia, with low tidal volumes and low respiratory rates. Also, be aware of the asthma COPD overlap patient, where you'll target a lower oxygen saturation, typically 88 to 92%. All right, let's wrap up with some high-yield pearls and pitfalls. First, do not delay bronchodilators and steroids. Time is airway. Second, a normal SpO₂ in a tachypneic asthmatic is a red flag for impending respiratory failure. Third, avoid aggressive fluid resuscitation unless there is clear evidence of dehydration. Fourth, remember that chest X-rays are low yield unless you suspect a complication. And finally, if the patient is not improving after 1 hour of aggressive therapy, escalate early. Do not wait for complete decompensation. Thank you for your attention. Mastering these principles will help you confidently manage acute asthma exacerbations and improve patient outcomes. Stay sharp and keep learning.